Like they say like an actual like Golden Gate Bridge type of bridge gets completely covered in paint, new paint, like once every 10 years, but they're constantly painting it.
Oh, yeah.
But the turnover is like, after 10
It
years.
takes that guy 10 years to paint the
again.
whole bridge?
Yeah, exactly.
Could you imagine having that job? Be like, all right, guys, here we go. Half of your career, you start at the beginning, and then you get to the end, you're like, all right, let's start it over again.
Yeah, I would imagine there's probably pretty high turnover rate on that on that crew, but
It's a little monotonous.
Yeah.
Same thing over and over.
yeah.
Nobody likes painting. Painting a bridge.
Definitely not painting a bridge.
Monotonous.
I don't want to paint a bridge.
Yeah, there are people that like painting, but it takes a special person to enjoy painting. Of course, I'm terrible at it, so probably if I was better at it, I wouldn't mind it as much.
Yeah,
but.
maybe. What did Pat say? Find something you're good at and then bring your passion with you?
Yep.
Instead of following your dreams and
That's right.
Right.
No following your dreams.
Mike Rowe talks about that. He says something about following your dreams is the stupidest thing he's ever heard or something. And he's got some quip with it, like it's better to, I think that's the
Be
idea.
useful, find something
you're good at and then, whatever. But
that's exactly who he quoted. So
yeah, is it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
people will hear it back-to-back episodes.
There
Let's
you
go.
go. Way to go, Mike.
My kids watched one episode of Dirty Jobs a little while ago, and like they love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they see
Yeah.
like the little,
Yeah.
the logo when you pop up on channels nowadays, you can see like the logo of the channel when
Yeah.
you're searching. If they see like the green splotches and the Dirty Jobs, they're like, "You want to watch Dirty Jobs?" Paw Patrol's right next to it. But
Right.
I want to watch Dirty Jobs.
That's good. I mean, the problem is that kind of work is not glorified the way it should be, like working with your hands and working, physically. It's all
Demanding jobs.
Well, is everything that's pushed is, financial sustainability. So if something doesn't appear to be a good paying job, they're not going to tell you to go after that. I mean, it doesn't look good for schools to send kids to be plumbers and contractors compared to college. Like if you walk across that stage and like you're pursuing a career, it's just not the same feeling as this guy's going to Harvard or this guy's going to Cornell or, whatever it might be.
The dichotomy to that is that the guy that's going to plumbing is making bank right out the gate.
Yeah. Well,
And the guy that's going to Harvard's got a mountain of debt for a degree they may not even use.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, 10 years ago when the whole don't go to college if you don't know what you're doing movement started, it seemed like, all right, they have there's a logical point there. And now it's like the idea is so, I don't know, like I think about it differently now than I did 10 years ago. Like,
Yeah.
you kind of knew it was true 10 years ago, and now it's like, boy, people going to college, like, what are they doing? It almost feels like the movement has
The pendulum swing is coming
gotten
back.
a lot of traction.
don't get me wrong. Like, I want my medical doctor to be going to college and the guy designing that bridge, right? Like, I want them to be going to college.
Lawyers.
Yeah. Do I need, my grocery clerk to have a degree in philosophy, finance, physics,
Yeah.
But so I'm not saying it's completely useless. I just think you really need to evaluate, especially now with the cost so crazy. You have to make a choice whether it's worth it or not. Days of going to Syracuse University for
an education
that you can get at JCC or whatever, the universities it'll come around. Prices I don't know if they'll come down, but they'll quit going up because kids will eventually quit going, I would think. I don't know.
I would think that the generation, like the millennial generation in particular, has kind of eaten the cost of not looking at the cost beforehand. Right? Like, you got to go to college. It's the fastest path to the middle class. You have to do this. You have to do that. And then there's, how many is it? It's over $1 trillion in debt, student loan debt.
It's a lot.
So, I think that generation, I know for me, we're going to have that discussion, like with my kids. All right, what are you looking to do? What's the smartest way to go about it? Instead of just whatever school will take you, whatever prestigious school will get you in. And not that we did that, but
I think the fast track to college out of high school is
pull that, Nick. Just pull that.
Is because
there you go. Just tilt it.
So like when you if you're a mechanic, you own a shop. So if you don't work on cars your entire childhood, what's the likeliness that you're going to like become a mechanic? Not very high, right?
Right.
What do most children do from 5 to 18? They sit in a classroom and do what they do, like the school thing. So not like most of them aren't like on a job site doing plumbing or doing electrical or learning how to frame or painting or
right.
So like to me, I feel like the reason why kids just default to college is because you do what you're comfortable with. And like a lot of high schoolers aren't graduating. This is my theory. A lot of high schoolers aren't graduating thinking, what can I do outside my comfort zone? No, they're thinking, what's the logical next step? What am I comfortable with? And that's to step right into the next classroom setting. Like you do it's like why we don't start businesses or we don't take leaps in life. Like it's uncomfortable. And I think high schoolers default into going to college for the same reason. It's what they've done for 12 years. Why would they not do what's comfortable and jump right into the next classroom again? Like, I don't know. I feel like it's to me, that's kind of a big part of it.
Yeah, I
got to encourage them to do more than just sit in a classroom.
And I think in the probably in the 60s and 70s, maybe even the 80s, it was much more relevant, to have that conversation about college because for a lot of people, that was the path to increase your income. Yeah. If you wanted to work at the mill, you were going to be in the same trajectory. So for a lot of those parents, they did that deal. They worked their butts off, that generation, they worked 50, 60 hours a week, made enough money to, kind of make ends meet. And so they told their kids, they saw IT stuff coming. They saw engineering, medical degrees really kind of coming through as being a lot more lucrative. And so they said, hey, you can go, you can do this. College also wasn't $40,000 a year, and so I think for a long time that was a relevant conversation to have. I went to college, sort of. I mean, I went to tech school is really what it was. I didn't have to take English and math and history and science. I was in an auto repair shop for 4.5 hours a day and in the classroom for an hour and a half every day, 5 days a week at college. So I went to college, but it wasn't the typical college scene, quote unquote. I didn't schedule my classes when I wanted to. I didn't not schedule classes the day after drinking night, or whatever. So they built the program kind of as set up like a work day, for the kids. So don't get me wrong, college was great. I loved it. I should have appreciated the time a lot more than I did. You're always trying to get to that next phase of life.
Yeah.
And man, if you could ever just get that in your head to enjoy where you're at, it's something
Stephanie and I just had this conversation on like 2 days ago about how if I was to go back into policing, I wish I would just enjoy it a little bit more. I enjoyed it and I was good at it.
Yeah.
But like there was times when I would let the negativity get to me or the complaining in the department get to me or whatever, and then maybe even participate in that too much. But I remember being like, it's a cool job. Yep. It should have just been fun. You have such great opportunity to impact people's lives. It's so purposeful. And then I also thought about that with college. And she said exactly what you just said. She said, when you're removed from it, you realize how good you had it or how great it was. You wish you would have appreciated it more.
Yep.
That's a good barometer to do that for right now. So
yeah, because there's no reason, like there's phases of life where it can just be miserable. Like you can be in a miserable job and you have to do that for a time and whatever until you get to the next phase. So I'm not saying you have to enjoy it, but you can't take things so seriously. Like we work on cars and a lot of times I just have to step back and be like, take a breath. You're just working on somebody's, motorized vehicle that runs on gasoline that can get you, across the country in 2 or 3 days. Mm-hmm. And, we just need to take a step back and just, it's okay.
Yeah.
Whatever is happening, it's okay, and so.
Yeah, I just saw a Instagram reel of a guy talking. He's a comedian. We would know him if we pulled him up, but he was saying we're the most privileged people to have ever lived on the planet ever. And obviously we know that.
Sure.
But he said taking a shower, even 60, 70 years ago, a hot shower is not a thing.
No.
And we take it for granted.
Yeah.
But somehow now we're a culture that's so
privileged that we're trying to go back and say you should take cold showers.
Yeah, it's lifestyle creep, right? You'll never be able to. I mean, you can go back, but usually it's a pretty severe circumstance because, I don't know. I don't want to go back to one vehicle per family. You know,
Right.
Our lifestyle doesn't work for that, but that's the way we grew up. I mean, when we grew up, if mom needed the car, of course, we were homeschooled, so we all woke up at whatever time to get him to work by 7. So we loaded
Right.
5 people in the car, drove to town, dropped dad off, came back home, and
And then mom had the car for the day.
and then mom had the
hopefully
car.
Dad
And she
didn't
could
need to
go
get home.
somewhere or whatever, and it's just different.
It is life creep. When Dad was on, he talked about that.
Yep.
And but anyway, we are here with Tyson Roggie, my oldest brother.
Yes.
That is crazy. You are a resident expert in my brain on a bunch of different topics. You're a successful businessman and entrepreneur. You've got a boatload of kids, so you know a thing or two about parenting. And
If the boat holds 6 kids, then I have a boatload.
if the boat holds enough kids, then you got a boatload. And also regarding parenting, you've done a lot of your own research and leading seminars and stuff like that as far as focusing on your child's heart, which is really important. I'm interested to know a little bit about the work-life balance, what a healthy one looks like from you. But we're excited to have you. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm excited.
Yeah. Nick, do you have anything to add to that?
What's up?
He
My
just
oldest
said-
brother-in-law.
Your oldest brother-in-law. Yes, this is a family
Forever and
affair.
ever. Yep.
That is true. Some things never change.
Yeah, Livy babysat for us last night, and I asked her on the phone how old she was. Because, to me, she's still 12.
Yeah, Olivia is Tyson's oldest.
That's right.
Yep.
And she said 15, and Brielle said she's 16 in a month or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, whoa.
Less, no.
Dyson must be like, what's
Yeah.
that feel like? Having
Dude,
a
I'm
16-year-old
so excited.
kid.
We are driving these kids all over the place, and man, I cannot wait for the
no
for the
sentimentality
state,
whatsoever.
Yeah, no, like my child is becoming an adult.
I feel confident
crazy.
in how she has turned out. She's extremely responsible. Really, all my kids are so far, as far as the responsibilities they've been given. So, I'm nervous about, obviously, all the little things that could happen, as far as driving. There's risk. It is what it is, you know. But she is super prepared. She's very smart.
Yep.
She's responsible. She's mature well beyond her peers. And so I'm not nervous about her making a dumb decision. Always nervous about mistakes, and obviously with driving, a 4,000-pound piece of metal around, anything can happen. But no, I'm not nervous. I'm excited to be able to sit in the passenger seat, honestly, and kind of veg out, when we're driving.
Hey, that's good.
I'm a little bummed that it takes, I think there's a minimum of 6 months of driving before you can get your license in the great state of New York. So I'm a little bummed that it's going to take that long for her to get her actual license. But no, I'm excited. It is crazy to think though. 16.
Yeah, you've been a parent for 16 years, almost.
Yeah. Yep.
She's gonna be an adult soon.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is the most respectful, responsible 16-year-old I've ever met in my entire life.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Parents did a good job, whoever they are.
Yeah, whoever they are, they did good.
Yeah, she
her
came
mom
over last night.
Her mom did a great job.
We had a pivot. Yeah, we had a pivot in the plan for the night, and we relayed it to her, and her reaction was instant. Yep, that sounds great. And I'm like, man, I don't know, just the way she said it, I was like, this. She's so respectful, and that's her first instinct. And you got, like I said,
How'd you do that?
Yeah.
yeah. Can you tell us how you did that?
Well, I appreciate hearing that because when you're in the middle of the battlefield, you don't always see, that you're winning the war, kind of, right? Mm-hmm. And so
when you send your kids out is kind of when you.
It feels like there's a lot of casualties in just little interactions, and it's like, man, I feel like we're banging our heads against the wall with X, situation or whatever. But then you see them interact with other kids or other adults, or, Olivia has a huge heart. And so it really kind of brings it it brings it full circle. I heard somebody say one time, like, if you're too far removed from something, you don't have a good view of it. But also if you're too close to something, you don't have a good view of it either. And so it's nice to hear that, because on the inside, I know my kids are doing well, but it is hard, it's not easy to purposefully raise your kids. Man, Paw Patrol is a good babysitter, but it's not a good goal to have your kids be raised by, other things, other people, other places, other devices, whatever. So we, Olivia and I connect on quite a few things. Like, we both love watching movies. So Shay, tends to not be able to stay up as late just because she's up early, getting the house ready the next day. And so she tries to get to bed at a reasonable time, which I should too, but I don't, because I
join the club.
I don't know. It's too, I do my best work, after supper. So that's when I'm kind of awake, and, I'm not usually awake until 10 o'clock. It seems like, mentally,
Yep.
I mean, I'm physically awake, but, it takes me a little while to get going.
And Shay is your wife.
Shay is my wife. Yes. So I'm, so Olivia and I love watching movies together. We love talking politics together. We love thinking. She's a learner. She loves learning. And so we connect on a lot of that stuff. So we've been able to really create a bond, I think, and a relationship that allows us to have conversations. Like, if something goes a little bit sideways on something, I can say, hey, Livy, here's this situation. This is kind of what happened, and, this is really what should have happened. And it's training, People think the word discipline is, the same word as punishment. And it's really not. Discipling is what discipline is, right? It's the same root word. And so disciplining your children is, a lifelong, or at least an 18-year-long process. It looks different, obviously, in the early stages than it does in the middle and the later stages. And so we've really just been able to develop a relationship where we can talk about stuff, and she bounces ideas. She talks to me about boys. She talks to me about clothes. She talks to me about, life. And so I'm just super excited to have that kind of a relationship with Olivia, and with my other kids too. It's obviously, we're talking about Olivia right now, but my other kids are the same way.
Yes,
so.
they are.
Yeah, and you have a built-in babysitter.
Yes, it took 16 years, 15 years. No, she started babysitting, I guess, when she was 12 or 13. But
for the other littles.
She's the oldest cousin. Curse or blessing? I'm not sure. So probably sometimes a curse, or a blessing for the rest of us.
Yes,
she handles it well. She handles it well. So yeah.
Well, that kind of is a nice segue into. We'll just kind of jump forward to where I thought maybe we would go, but this is a great segue. Focusing on the heart of your child and what is the ultimate goal for your kids. And a little bit of the theme that we've noticed from having different fathers on was that you want your kids to, there's other things, raised to love the Lord, raised to have good relationships and all of these things. But one of them was to have that kind of relationship with the parents, that when they leave, there's the relationship there where you can connect and want to be around them forever, Yeah. So like when she moves out, the relationship is there so that you want to keep that relationship together, and so does she. I think that's important.
Yeah. I see so many relationships where it's a, whether it's a father and son or father and daughter, where there's a relationship there, but only technically, only by definition. And so, I want my kids, I've always wanted to raise my kids to be good decision makers. So that means letting them make decisions that I wouldn't normally let them make. As long as it's not detrimental to their health or, going to cause major repercussions down the road, letting them make mistakes is one of the best ways, obviously, to learn. When we're working on cars, we learn way more when we don't find the problem right away. If we spend 2-3 days working on a problem, man, we know that stinking thing inside and out, right? And so we try to use those situations when they come up as, okay, this is a great example, because what better place to learn how to relate to someone or how to respond to this situation than when they're in home with two parents that can guide them. I'd rather they find out, at home how to function in this scenario, whether it be a tough friendship or whether it be, an outside, how to set boundaries with people or, whatever it is. And so that also builds like a mutual respect from them toward you as a parent. So if I'm just going around telling my kids what to do all the time, they don't feel like they're able to make decisions. It decreases their worth. And so by me allowing them to make those decisions and then not coming down on them when it goes south, like I knew it would, right? Like if you eat 4 ice cream cones, you're going to feel like crap the next morning or whatever. But if I let you do that, you learned your own lesson better, right? You're going to remember that the next time. Mm-hmm. You hit your hand with a hammer, or if you cut your head open with a machete, or not that any of my kids have ever done that. But like, you're going to learn that a lot better than if I say, hey, don't eat those, or don't do that with that tool. Mm-hmm. The machete thing's not a good example, because that would have been, that could have been a little bit more severe, but we had that, we had it under control. So, but it was a good lesson, right? And
that actually happened?
Machete's a little bit maybe strong of a word, but one of our kiddos was helping me in the garden, and I had a conversation with him, kind of taught him, and just, my lack of wisdom, that was probably a scenario where I should have been more careful. I've been accused of being not quite as careful as I should be sometimes.
By whom?
So many people, actually, not just my wife. So my wife says things, it's like you hear it, but you're not allowed to take it seriously until somebody else says it, and then you still don't take it serious, and then something happens, and then you're like, oh, he lived. It wasn't that big of a deal. So,
zone of proximal development, Nick.
But it's like I don't want to raise my kids inside of these boundaries for 18 years, and then at 18, you're just like, all right, there you go. Do whatever you got to do. So you let them push boundaries. You let them make decisions, because they need to be good decision makers. Like, that's the whole goal of having kids. Is to send kids out, right, to prepare them for life. Or once you have kids, I guess you can have kids for different reasons, but when you have kids, what you want to do is prepare them for their future. And if you're not teaching them to make decisions and just kind of figuring it out on their own, then you're going to send them out very unprepared when they're an adult. And so our goal has always been to influence them, when we can, when we feel it's appropriate. And then, again, let them make mistakes when it's appropriate. Let them make decisions that they need to find out what the repercussions are on their own. And if you have that heart connection with them, they're going to come back to you, hopefully, when things don't go right. Right? That's the goal. I mean, same with our relationship with the Lord. Something doesn't go right, in our lives, the Lord wants us to come back to Him, right? Not to run away like Adam and Eve did, right, in the garden, and whatever. So that's kind of been our mindset. I think I came to the party late. I think that was more my wife's thing. In the beginning, she got a hold of some good material, and she really sought out some advice from people that she saw had good fruit in their kids' lives. And so we really studied, and we really tried diligently to apply those principles. It is not easy. It takes a lot of dying to yourself, and especially when, it's not a lot of sleep. It's patience you have to develop. Sometimes having kids is more for your own personal development than
that's for sure.
The tax breaks.
Absolutely.
Oh, for them.
Yeah.
More for yourself than for them. Got it.
I could never understand people that would have kids on January 1st or 2nd or 3rd and lose that whole tax year.
Do you happen to know when my second was born?
I don't. I can't remember.
Not super happy about it. No,
when was it?
January 16th.
Yeah. Should have scheduled a C-section.
Wait, for real? Which one of your kids? That's my anniversary.
Giada.
Oh.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure I knew that. I just forgot.
You came on your anniversary to the hospital.
Boy, I've got a terrible memory.
Yeah, you do. That's great.
Yeah, this is not the first time that I've heard that concept of like, it's kind of like two things in one, really, like not being afraid to let your kids make mistakes while they're in your home, because that's the best time to prepare them for how to handle the consequences and whatnot. Better in your home than before they leave and are on their own and don't know how to handle anything. It's a very interesting. I've heard that a lot in the public school versus homeschool conversation. I'm trying to remember exactly how, but like, I think in the defense of sending your children to the public school setting, you wanting them to experience the things that are outside your home while you still have them in your home in the evening to talk with them.
Sure.
So I've heard this thing used in defense of public school, and anyway, regardless, I think it's a parenting theme that I hear from a lot of good parents. So it must be true.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's worked for us so far. Now, I absolutely do not claim to have figured it all out or, anything. That we have our struggles. I already can see things that my kids are going to struggle with because I did not do a good job of nipping that in the bud, whatever it was. But, the funny thing is like most of that stuff is like my character flaws are now coming through with them, and I can see it. And I'm like, oh, crap.
Yeah.
But it's, there's grace. Like, obviously,
Do you remember, like, that happening around, like, the first times of that happening when your first and second were young? Probably it would have been Livy. Like, I saw that in Levi one time when he was young, and it, like, really hurt me.
Saw something of yourself.
Yeah, it was, like, it was a pretty rude awakening for me. Like, oh, man, I screwed up. He handled the situation a way that I would have handled it, and he did it because he saw me do it, and it kind of hit me a little hard. And do you remember?
I had daughters first, so I don't know if I would have noticed it real young. And my daughter Olivia is more of a leader personality, like a bold leader personality, kind of, where I think I tend to be more passive. So I don't know that I saw with them. I mean, it's been more, honestly, probably in the last few years that I've noticed stuff. And I think that's probably, honestly, just because the Lord's working in me, bringing stuff kind of out that I've needed to deal with. So I think I don't know that I saw it in them at a young age.
Yeah. I'm a little more of an intense, like for me. I think that I would handle things with anger would be my first response, and I don't think that that's your first response. So, and I think seeing that in a younger kid might be a little more, like your things are different than my things, so that makes sense.
No, my first thing is definitely not anger. It's much more probably passive aggressiveness and judgment on people. So that's probably my
that's good that you know that. That's a good thing to know, I suppose. We lost feed on a couple. I'm just going to reset, and then we're going to come back from the break and talk about. We touched a little bit on homeschooling and public schooling, and then seeing your personality flaws kind of translated through your kids and how you parented. I actually want to keep going on that vein. So
sounds great.
We'll be right back, right?
Betcha.
Yes, someday I'm going to have a Jamie.
Absolutely.
And they're going to be right over there, and they're just going to do all this for me, and I don't have to do it. It's very hard to keep a conversation and keep like what cameras are running, what audio is going.
Yep.
All right, everybody, we're back. If you didn't figure that out already, we left off talking about personality traits and seeing
personality flaws.
Yeah, flaws.
Let's rehash that a little bit.
Come through in your parenting, and that you can see the result with your kids.
Yeah.
So before we get into the homeschool, public school topic, I'd like to just stay on that vein for one more second. Do you think that it is, if you're not conscious of your flaws, like everybody isn't for the most part, it's very hard to be self-aware.
Right.
At what age did you start to see those come through? Was there a particular age for the children? Did it have to do with a life event of your own? Or maybe you just came to realize that something was happening? What did that look like?
Man. See, I'm 41 now, so probably when I was 40 and a half, I think maybe it was, I don't know. It's definitely intensified more recently. Just kind of working through those things, kind of going through the fire on some of those things a little bit. And I think for the age of my kids, is that what you're asking? I think, yeah, 8, 10, 12,
okay,
years. You could kind of start seeing stuff like social awareness is a big one, So our kids, obviously, I don't know if we mentioned it, but we homeschool them. So they're not in a public school setting. So one of the things you have to work harder on as parents, because you're in more of a free-flowing environment, is you have to work on respect and not talking and when someone else is, or not talking back. And so social awareness was a big thing. I don't know that necessarily came from me, that specific one, although I guess naturally probably did to some degree, because Shay's very socially aware too. So it's not like there's one of us is way off balance there. But I could tell that like Olivia wanted to be in all the conversations with all of the adults in the room, at 12, 13 years old, right? Like she loved having conversations. So we had explained to her that, children are to be seen and not heard. No, I'm just kidding. But
no.
We had to explain to her like when it was appropriate to give just kidding. When it was appropriate to give her input, and you speak when you're spoken to when you're with elders, just simple little things like that kind of with her. And, every kid kind of has their own thing. Carson is my firstborn son, so he's 11 right now. So he tends to be a little more shy, a little more laid back, and that was kind of my personality when I was young. And so that's something I've worked on with him and put him in uncomfortable spots, when it's appropriate. And it does not change instantly. Like if you want to really screw your kid up, force them to really do something that embarrasses them, right? Or whatever. So it's little things. It's these little conversations throughout their 18 years. My brother Tyler, when he's coaching Little League, he tells the kids, it's all the little things in baseball that you do, right? It's all the little things that have to come together to win a game. And the same is true raising kids. It's not these big life-changing disciplinarian actions. It's little conversations, little tweaks. And again, it has to come from the heart, and it has to be geared toward their heart, because if you're doing it as an offended parent, then that's going to come through, and you can't parent that way. You have to see the goal is to raise good adults, not good kids. And so you have to have that mindset. Otherwise, you just end up kind of banging your head against the wall, and you might get exterior change in them. You might get their behavior to change, but it's not going to change their hearts, which is really what you want. That's the goal, is to develop kids who are kind and compassionate and loving and respectful, among other things. So again, parenting is half about raising the kids and half about God changing you, And so if you are a very impatient person, man, kids will shape that up in you quickly if you allow it to, Obviously, the more kids you have, I think the more patience you need. Although after 3, you don't even really know how many you have, kind of, because they just there's the older ones helping the younger ones now, so it doesn't feel like a huge.
That's where you went with that.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, okay, good.
It's, well,
where's my 5th born? I know they're here someplace.
Yeah, Shay keeps track of all the kids on that end of it, so I've got that covered.
That's good.
But, yeah, if it was up to me, we'd probably still be looking for some, But I lost what I was saying, but basically, we've also worked together as a team, Shay and I, and so again, she took the lead on a lot of it. So I'm kind of coming on board with her.
Catching up.
Yeah, I think so. There's definitely things that, like right now, one thing that I know that I screwed up big time is not showing Shay the respect in front of our kids that I should have. Whether it was just me thinking my idea was better, or whether it was, I don't know how extreme the disrespect was, but the kids picked up on that, subtle or whatever, and now I would undermine her in a decision that she made, and so now the kids have they struggle to respect what she's saying, and I think that's probably true to some degree in any parenting relationship. I think depending on how the father is, kind of that booming father voice, demands more authority than a mother's.
Wait till your dad gets home.
Typically, wait till your dad gets home. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember growing up that for sure. That was and if you ticked off mom, like you had to deal with dad.
Yeah.
And I don't think I did a good job of portraying a healthy element of that. I'm not going to say that's necessarily a completely healthy element to have that fear in yourself either, but I didn't, I would tend to take the middle of an argument, and really what I should have been doing is taking Shay's side of the argument, because it built a...
you and Braille are a lot alike.
It built a... Yeah.
Nick's hearing all this for the second time.
We can talk about this, not in front of the kids.
Yeah. So I have learned, and it's hard for me because I feel like I am very much a person who sees both sides of things. I don't think I always did, but I think I see both sides of things a lot more. I said I enjoy politics, and I can see both sides of a lot of things. So that makes you seem a little bit wishy-washy sometimes, but also, like, it's not healthy when you're parenting.
Yeah.
For your spouse. Again, support your wife in front of your kids, and then
/husband.
Go out, go into another room, and talk about it.
That is true. Like, in all seriousness, like, I see that in Brielle too. Like, she sees both sides. Like, it's very textbook. Like, I think that you guys maybe got that from some same parenting source on the back end of the front end of your guys' childhood. I don't know, but like, I can see that in Brielle too. She sees, if there's a conflict between me and the kids, I know that her brain is like processing, seeing both sides. I just know it.
Okay, that's interesting.
And so
so then
I
you
totally
feel undermined, or you could feel undermined.
I could, yeah, and I think I did a lot, and I'm getting better at being more patient, and not letting that bother me in the moment. But yeah, like that's very interesting to hear you say that, because it slipped.
Did you hit the knob?
Put it back. I promise I put it back.
You just went like totally.
Yeah, like just a little bit. Yeah. Anyway, so I can
continue.
I can see her brain like.
Yeah.
Like trying to put that aside, like seeing both sides, but trying to not let that take over in the moment.
Yeah.
Look exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
It's interesting. We did, Brielle and I were close growing up. I mean, I don't know how much older. 10, 12, 13 years maybe?
Very much older.
13, yep. She's 28.
Yeah.
13 years.
And so, we had a different kind of a relationship, right? I mean, it was more like, it wasn't like we played together necessarily or anything. We weren't that age.
It's almost like a parent.
It was,
age,
it was
age.
neat. I mean, I remember when I went to college, and I'd come home. Again, she was maybe 5, 6 years old, something like that. She would want to, listen to Odyssey and sleep in my room, on the floor with me or whatever, So she was we were always very close. And so maybe some of those shaping influences, for whatever could have hit.
I would argue, knowing both of you, that it's the agreeableness side of your personality. Yeah. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
We were pretty much, you and Tyler were raised a little different because you guys were older and mom and dad were in different stages, and then they kind of had a break, and then the three of us. Yep. But agreeableness is definitely you're hitting all the indicators for it. Ugh. Yeah, you're probably somewhere in the 50th percentile, 60th percentile of agreeableness, I would assume.
Yep.
I'm not quite that agreeable, but Brielle is also.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that has something to do with it. I'm sure.
Yeah, and just being probably more narcissistic than I should be, and feeling like I am right most of the time. When I see a situation, that doesn't play well into that either. So those are just some of the things I'm learning about myself, and just trying to pursue change in that and become a better husband, a better father, a better boss, all that stuff. So it's interesting to watch my kids growing up now. I can see some of this stuff and I'm like, oh man.
You're like, that's me.
But all me. I'm also super excited that I can still work on that with my kids. I have the relationship with them. I can take them aside, and I can say, hey, just so you know, I know it's hard, but this is something I really want you to work at, because it's something that if you don't figure it out now, and I'm not saying you have to be perfect, but if you don't figure out what's going on now, it's gonna be detrimental to your relationships later on in life, And so just super excited to have the opportunity with my kids, to be able to train them in that and relay the importance of always being self-aware, like you said, and reflecting and all right, how can I handle this situation better the next time? So,
yeah, and using emotional intelligence to get better. I think when you're parenting, most parents would think, oh, I've got them for 18 years, to kind of propel them into the future. But if you have the relationship that's supposed to be where it is after they leave, it's still there. It's still, you can work on things. You want them to come back for your advice.
Yeah. It is there for sure, but the big things, you've got 10 to 12 years. The first 10 to 12 years is really the bread and butter of raising kids. And after that, your influence changes. I'm not spanking a 13-year-old, or I'm not, any discipline, any discipline you inflict on them, whether it's a timeout or a grounding or removing privileges, it's really tricky at that 12 plus age, because it's hard for it to not build resentment in the child. So we really approach it with listen, this is what went wrong. Here's what's going to happen if we continue to let you go on this path. And I really don't want to do that. I want to bring you back into the safety net of how to function. And so that changes the whole perception. When it's the kid just standing there ready to get pounced, by dad, and here comes the barrage again, I'm going to get chewed out for whatever, to, no, my concern is not that you've offended me. My concern is that you continue on this path, and the what you're going to reap because of what you're sowing right now
is destruction.
Yeah, and, it doesn't mean you're going to die from this.
Right.
But you know what? It could mean that relationships are a lot more of a pain. And so here's something you need to figure out. And that's really that's really changed the way. It's amazing how your kids can offend you, though. Like my 2-year-old can offend me. I'm like, he's got complete control of my emotions. Like a 2-year-old can control a 41-year-old, you know? Yeah. And it just blows my mind. And so you have to step back and you have to look at them, and then you have to be like, all right, I am in charge, and here's how we're going to do this. And I mean, parents let their kids run rampant, and kids need boundaries. One book we read talked about how boundaries, exemplify value for what's inside of those boundaries. And so when kids don't have any boundaries, they don't feel valued. It's an interesting concept, because everything you hear is you can't say no to kids, you can't tell them what to do, you can only encourage them, blah, blah, blah. And don't get me wrong, I think we need to be a lot more encouraging. That's coming from somebody especially who struggles to be encouraging. Like, that is not one of my gifts. And so I definitely need to do that more, but also the kids need to hear no. Like, they need to hear, no, that's not okay. And so when you place boundaries around them for that, it does let them know you care about them. And especially if you can do it, like I said, in light of, here's where you're headed, just so you know. And, I've got my almost 16-year-old daughter, asking me questions about, hey, do you think this is appropriate? Or do you think this is okay? And I'm at the point now where I'm like,
it's up to
you. It doesn't matter what I think. Like, you're old enough. What do you think? And she'll say, well, I think this. And I'll tease it back and forth a little bit, play the devil's advocate or something, and she'll kind of stick with it. And she'll say, well, what do you think about this? And I say, I think you're right on track. I think that is a great way to go. That's a great path to take, So it's just super cool to see some of the fruit of that in their lives.
I'm really looking forward to the day when, like, I give them that speech and they actually, like, understand what I'm saying.
And they don't say I have rocks in my pockets.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I'm so sick of saying to a 4-year-old, this is not good for your life. If I continue to let you do this, you'll get down a path of destruction. Like, and he's just like, I have no clue what you're saying. But
can I go play?
Can I go play? Some parents, and I'm sure I've done this plenty of times, but they will use like really big words, and the kids are just like,
yeah,
what?
Yeah.
Like, how are you not understanding
one
this?
thing,
You're being scrupulous.
One practical thing that helps, and I think I'm better at this than my wife is, because she's more of a caring person, and she really wants things to hit home with them, and so she will use a lot of words and explain it. This is a conversation we've had before, and I don't. Probably because I don't think about things as in-depth as she does. That's probably the reason. Probably because I'm just less, motivated. I'm probably more motivated, like, all right, let's get this over with so I can go do my thing. So probably not great reasoning on my end, but using less words. Like, you've got about, with a 4-year-old, like, you got about 30 seconds.
Maybe.
Like, if you can't fit it in that 30 seconds, you're just wah, 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 And so keeping it short and sweet. And again, it's not one event a day. This might be 10 little events, but you can do 10 30-second events, right? You don't want to do 10 10-minute events with a kid, and
like 10 30-second events is more valuable than 1 10.
Yeah. And lowering your expectations of them, immediately getting something right away. So, yeah.
That's good advice for me.
Yeah.
I'm in that stage where I feel like if I have Sienna, my oldest, and I'm telling her instruction and she's sort of getting it.
You don't even know if she speaks English at this age.
I have no idea.
Like, you don't know.
I don't know anymore. She could literally kind of be getting it a little bit, at least baby steps. And then if I over communicate it, then she goes right back to square one with that interaction. So I think like once you get to a certain point,
you can see they understand. Yeah. Quit while you're ahead.
Yeah, yes. No, definitely. I mean, you've got a lot of time, and again, if you're not so selfish like I tended to be in my early years, especially where I just wanted to get the talk over with and move on,
so you can go
because I had my stuff to do. Mm-hmm. if you can get into that mindset of, hey, this is pretty important, take your time with it, make it quick, but have your heart in the right place, too. So again, your kid comes up to you and, whacks you on the shin with a baseball bat or something, like,
plucks that nose hair,
pulls it back to your neck, it's like, you got to really make sure your heart's in the right place. So,
my oldest is at the age where I don't know that our previous forms of correction are
sufficient.
Like if they're effective.
Yeah.
So we sent him out to make hay. The boys came up with this great game the other day of taking our 5-gallon buckets, and our lawn just makes grass clippings like you wouldn't believe. And they figured out how to pack the grass clippings into them and then dump the buckets out, and they would keep their shape like a sandcastle. And they thought it was the greatest game, and I took that away from them. So like yesterday, they're like having a rough
childhood
trauma. And I got to a point where I was like, all right, we need to figure out how to get something through to him. Let's try some manual labor. So I sent him out and said, you need to go out and make 5 hay bales and don't come in until you're done. And I don't know if it worked, but we ended up doing that twice that day.
Yeah.
He had to go out and do it later in the day. And it was like a 10-minute project, 5 hay bales is, I was tempted to up it to 10 the next time. And then I realized I'd lose my buying power if I kept upping it. Like I can't make him do 50. So like at some point, the effectiveness of the correction is going to wane. If
you're going to be out there for 16 hours today.
Exactly.
Crack of dawn.
So, but I don't know. Even at 7 years old, I don't know I often don't know what is getting through to him for in these conversations. And I think that you're right. It takes lots of little conversations where your love comes through more than your anger, then 1 or 2 big conversations where you're emotionally charged and nothing's getting through. And especially for some children, they like, my oldest, it's even worse if it's an emotionally charged conversation because some kids are more sensitive to that.
Yep.
And it's even more important for some children that it's short and sweet and full of love and not anger.
Yeah, and I know for me, like, I have a super bad complex of wanting to please people, so when I feel like I've let somebody down, probably my wife a lot of times, right? I go into this I get defensive, and then I have trouble being humble and bringing things back. And if I could have learned that earlier on where my value lies, that would help. And so when you're dealing with your kids, if you can let them know in the middle of the discipline process or the discipleship process, I love you so much. My love for you doesn't change based on your actions. There's a great quote that I heard a while ago, and there's nothing you can do to make God love you less. There's nothing you can do to make God love you anymore. And I feel like that should be our goal as parents. There's nothing I can do or my kids can do to make me love them any less. Now, does it feel like that? Yeah, because I'm a very imperfect father. But portraying that to them will at least calm that emotion down. Like it's not a life and death situation for that kid. I know that I'm still loved at least. Every kid's different. We had our first 3 kids pretty chill, pretty laid back, temperament-wise. Whether it was the shaping influences kind of, or whether it was personality or genetics or whatever, the stage of life we were at, I don't know. But man, we thought we were really good parents. And then we had our next 3 that were much stronger personalities. Isaac will still see him, he's 2, so 2-year-olds are always strong personality in my opinion. But, we went through a period with Ethan, my 7-year-old, and we were just like, wow, what happened? Like, did we take the right kid home? Like, our other 3 were nothing like this. We didn't do anything different, or whatever. And Shay kept working on him, kept loving on him, and, myself as well. And, now he is like that energy that you see is also compassion and love. Like, he's the kid, he'll run up, we'll tuck him into bed, pray with him or whatever, and I'll leave and come downstairs, and he'll come back down the stairs, and I'll be like, "What are you doing, Ethan?" He goes, "I just need one more hug." And so he'll come down and just give me a big old hug, and like he'll hug me for like 5 minutes if I let him. So one of the hardest personalities for us early on, it turned into one of the most precious things, that I have with him. And so it could have gone the other way, though, I think, if we hadn't been diligent and we hadn't worked at it. And so I've got stories like that with every one of my kids. I'm not a big baby fan. Like, I like him for like the first 4 weeks, and then the next like 2.5 years, I'm like, no, because I want to be able to talk to the kid and have the kid respond to me in a language that I understand, and be able to. So that middle period for me is just like a minor version of torture, kind of. And so we're kind of almost past that stage now. We'll see if I miss it. We talked in the beginning about wishing you were to the next stage all the time, right? And so we'll see if in a couple of years I regret that, and I'm like, oh man, I wish I just had a 1.5-year-old to chase around and cry back at me when I tell him no, or something like that.
Or laughing for the first time and all the other.
There are so many
all the good things. That's my favorite stage. 6 months to a year and a half is my favorite.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, like when they hit the 5-month mark and they start smiling and giggling at things, it's like, all right, we're in the good phase. That's my favorite. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I know a lot of people. I've met a lot of people that are like, I'll take them for the first 3 years, and then you can have them after that. And I'm like, that's fine, because
deal. Where do I sign?
Yep.
Let's see how we're doing. We got a couple of more minutes. I just want to stay with this. I think most men are, generally speaking, less patient than women. Just the way it is.
Sure.
I think it's a mothering instinct, but also it's how we were created. So for me, the newborn stage, if the temperament, like I have one of each right now. I had a baby who was not easy for a long time, and then one who was. So like I can see how people would like that stage, but the newborn stage is tough. But then once they start to talk to you, and that's kind of nice.
Yeah, man, they get so cute. 5 months. It's like a switch.
Yeah,
they go from like this little blob of like they don't do nothing but cry and sleep to like, they're laughing and they're giggling and they're sucking their thumb and they're making noises, and you go in to get them up from their nap and they're just staring at the ceiling like happy as can be. I don't know. They just do they start doing all the cute things at 5-6 months, and I just love that next year after that.
To each their own.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then they hit 2.5, 3, and like the will kicks in, and that's like the hardest for me. Like that's where Isla's at right now. She wants things on her terms, and tell her no and get ready to deal with a half an hour, session it's like, it's not my favorite. She's still my favorite, but no, I'm just kidding. She like, it's still a really great stage. I love everything else, all the good things, and I wouldn't trade it for the world, and I'm going to miss it a lot. And I already do miss it, but it's interesting, the different preferences.
Yeah. This is going to cut out. We have 15 minutes, and then Nick's got to bounce for some father duties. He's going to be at a soccer game.
I can't miss my kid's soccer game on a fatherhood podcast.
Is that what we are? Are we a fatherhood?
We're going to start talking about something else.
All right, so let's just turn those off. I'm going to turn them right back on, and we'll be right back. Sounds good? All right, folks. And we're back.
Welcome back.
For the second time. We were going to get into some of the business side of Tyson's focus, but instead, for the interest of time, we're going to stay with family and parenting, and we want to get your insight on homeschooling. Not that it's necessarily homeschooling versus public schooling, but what was kind of the decision for you guys to go the homeschooling route, and then also, if you could, what are some of the biggest misconceptions with homeschooling today?
Yeah. Let me start with where my passion for homeschooling kind of comes in. I was homeschooled all the way through. So K through 12 homeschooling. The ending of homeschooling is a little bit foggy because there's a lot of times homeschoolers finish up those requirements in less than 12 grades. So the last couple of years tend to be a little more directed. But so I was homeschooled, and I had the opportunity to spend tons of time with my grandpa's there up in the sugar bush and at making maple syrup and at Happy Hollow campgrounds, and just so many super good memories. I feel like most of my life now is just trying to recreate a bunch of those memories for myself, because I just had such good times. And then when I was 16, my parents got me an internship with an auto mechanic because I had worked on vehicles and tractors and stuff with grandpa's there. And so I had a kind of a desire for that. So my mom and dad went and talked to their mechanic and said, hey, could Tyson, come here on Saturdays and just he thinks he might like auto mechanics. Can he do that? So I ended up getting into that. And so it just allowed me the flexibility to be able to do some of that stuff. And it just fit perfectly, in my story, kind of really a God thing, I think. And so that sparked it, obviously. Just had a good experience overall growing up with that. And then, in my college years, kind of when Shay and I met, we had talked a little bit about that when we were starting to talk more seriously about dating. That was a conversation that had come up because it was important to me to have somebody, my spouse, be at home raising our kids. And, I don't know that homeschooling was, I didn't know where homeschooling lied in that, but I knew it was important for me I just wanted my wife to be somebody who wanted to be home raising our kids. That was important. So kids are important to me. If I'm going to have kids, I want to be the one at home raising them. It's just how I feel. And she was totally on board with it. Because, being at college, I didn't know, is she hoping to have a career? Is she, these were kind of some of the initial conversations. She was going for architecture, I think. So, that's not just like, hey, I'm here for whatever. That was pretty seriously directed, classes she was taking and stuff. So she immediately just loved the idea of homeschooling when we talked about it and being home. She kind of always joked that she used to always say she wanted to be barefoot, pregnant, and in the kitchen, And so for the last 19 years, that's pretty much what she's been with 6 kids. So
it's a dream come true.
It's a dream come true. And so...
You made that dream come true for her.
I so did. She made that come true for herself pretty much. But... So she latched onto that right away, and that was kind of a God thing, I felt like, just the fact that she was because she didn't know. She grew up in Oswego. It's a AA school. They graduated 400 kids, and so she knew one homeschooling family, and they were a bit odd, as could be the case,
Sure.
And so, but she loved it. She loved the idea of it. She did not have a great school experience, so certainly that lent to her openness to it, mm-hmm. for sure. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of how it got started. Her reasons were a little different than mine in the beginning. Her reasons were more social, she saw the stuff that can happen at school. She learned about things way too young that she had no business learning about, bus rides, the whole deal kind of. And so she was very open to it. My reasons were more performative or academic. My thing is you've got my kids for 6-7 hours a day, and what are we getting out of that? Especially based on my experience, right? Because, we had a couple hours of book work, and then, of course, we had other types of learning too. But I just couldn't see not having the flexibility and being able to direct my child's education to their bent, mm-hmm. To the way that they kind of want to be.
Right. Because that's hard to lose in a bigger class environment even.
Oh yeah, I think it's almost non-existent. You have a little bit of leeway, but if you wanna get your certain degrees, you're gonna do what they say to do. So if you're terrible at math, but you're really good artist, you're still going to be doing the math that they're telling you to do unless you really, really push yourselves. And I'm not in the school system, so I don't know what the options are, but I know it's very hard to take an alternative path and still.
It's a very standard curriculum that everybody takes. It's very cookie cutter.
That is, that is almost identical to Pat's story, that we talked about last week, having the freedom and flexibility that homeschooling gives you. You just said the same thing. You were able to find an interest, with the working on the cars and the tractors or whatever, and then that led you to the internship. And there's a clear path that you were only able to find because you were homeschooled. You didn't, because you had the freedom from homeschooling. Yeah. And it's an obvious benefit. And Pat said the same thing. That freedom is valuable.
Time you've said the same thing. Are you really Pat? You guys rip a mask off. It's me.
For real. I heard somebody say the other day, it's interesting, that 8 hours that you spend in school, in a lot of state-funded public school, their perspective was it's just busy work. You can get done in 4 hours what they get done in 8 at home. And that freedom is very valuable for children to find something that they like when they're done with their book work.
Yeah. So I one thing is I hated history kind of growing up, and through school. I just did not enjoy history, but now I really love it. And so one thing that's always interesting to me is our public education system. And so I've read a lot on where it came from, how it was developed, why it was developed, why we sit in rows, why a bell rings and we go to the next thing. And I'll let you guys, do your own research and come to your own conclusions on that, but it's not for the benefit of the kid. It was literally designed to produce factory workers. And that is, and again, it's not to say that a lot of great kids don't come out of public school, but I would say they come out of it in spite of it. They come out of it because of the teachers that they have. They come out of it because of the staff and the people who care at the schools, the superintendents, all of that. They come out okay in spite of the actual system that we use. Yeah. And the system is fairly antiquated. It's not changed much in the last 75 years.
Right.
You can go back and you can go to the one-room schoolhouse kind of design, right? But, that was honestly through 7 or 8 grades. And then after that,
on the farm.
Yeah.
Or you were
done.
You were done.
You learned what you needed to learn. And then, obviously, education has changed. There's more now to learn if you want to. But being able to say to my kid who hates math, listen, we need you to learn some math. You've got to learn some addition. But you know what? I don't need you to do trigonometry. I don't need you to do geometry. I'd love for you to have some of those concepts. I'd love for you to know that when you drive over a bridge that's hanging in the air from 2 beams, some guy used calculus and trigonometry and geometry for that. That's good to know. And then if that kid's interest is piqued, yeah, that's cool. And then maybe something from there. But I want my kid, when a kid is struggling in a subject, the tendency is to pound that subject more. Right? And kind of drill into it.
Right.
And my philosophy is, all right, we need to find out why. Is the kid just lazy? Because that's a possibility, and that we need to take care of. But do they just have a different passion?
Yeah, or different learning styles too. That is something in the last even 10 years that's really being explored more, the difference between especially boys and girls and how they learn.
Yeah.
And the net cost of just drilling everything into a kid's head that they don't learn in that direction. So
yeah, it's again, I have to stay balanced with things because I fully realize that for me, homeschooling is a huge passion of mine. It's not for everybody's,
right,
and that's fine. And I'm not here to harp on people who choose public school because even whether you homeschool or public school, you have to be involved in your kids' education. Mm-hmm. So Shay and I are chapter leaders for Homeschool New York. We're just kind of is the homeschool organization in New York, right? And so we're the chapter leaders for this local area. And one thing that we found during the pandemic is a lot of people chose homeschooling, right? Because they were kind of teaching their kids at home anyway, and it wasn't working well. And, the school kind of got thrown into the public school got thrown into that whole thing. And
right.
So, they weren't equipped to it. So a bunch of parents came to homeschooling. And one thing that we've heard a lot of conversations of was my kid's in 6th grade and they can barely read to me. Mm-hmm. And so on one hand, yes, that's a failure of the public education system for sure, because they said they could do it. But also, you're the parent. You need to know when your kid's in 6th grade if they can read to you or not. Mm-hmm. So that also shows a lack of relationship and involvement between you and your kid. So I wouldn't harp on the public education system as much if they didn't have to do things that they were never supposed to do. I can't even imagine teaching nowadays with some of the restrictions that are placed on teachers. There's just, you're having to teach kids manners. You have to be afraid of the kid's parent coming in and tattling on you, when it used to be the other way around, the kid didn't want to get in trouble at school because of their parents at home, and just the lack of respect. And so I'm not harping on teachers. I'm not harping, unless they don't like homeschooling, I'm not harping on, on the staff. I just think it's an impossible system to make function when we're asking the school to educate and raise these kids.
Right.
Now the education system is trying to do more of that stuff too. Right. Than they need to. They need to focus on. They need to focus on some of the basics before they worry about extracurricular stuff too. But so that's where some of my passion for that comes from. So
Nick, if you wanna, you can head out. I can wrap this up.
No, I'm good. We're good.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Just a couple minutes to wrap up.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
we're leaving at the good part. Dang it.
I know we got into the good part. We're gonna have to. We'll definitely be having you back. But there's definitely benefits to both, and there's certain demographics that require maybe both parents to work, and it makes it difficult. And there's a lot of nuance and a lot of difficulties there.
Yeah.
But if you can.
But let me pause.
Just what you said.
Let me stop you for a second. So there's demographic issues, right? Financial issues, etc. Okay, so that's great. New York State average cost per child. Take a guess per year
for public school.
Public school.
A year.
Yep. Okay. 1 year for one kid.
$5 million. I'm assuming it's astronomically high. What's the number? It's a trick question.
Wait, is this
so you blew my point, but
okay.
I was going to say 100,000.
Wait, from the budgetary, New York State budget, or
for 1
for
year?
The parent?
So let's pick on Lowville.
Okay,
they're pretty fiscally responsible, I would say. They're not going out, they're not going out and wasting people's money, right? Our teachers don't get paid $200,000 a year, right?
Yep.
So pretty fiscally responsible school. Their budget's $30 million, okay, for 1 year. $30 million.
Okay, right? $30 million, yeah.
Yep, we graduated 84 kids last year, I believe. Okay, so I don't know if that's an average class size or small class size. Let's say it's 100 kids per year, and you've got 13 grades, right?
Yeah.
On average. Now, you've got some other stuff in there. You've probably got some pre-K stuff. I don't know what all goes into that budget. So what do you...
27,000.
27 grand per year. New York State's average is 29. Okay. So demographically, if I can afford to use $29,000 to educate that kid in public, if there's a parent who wants to stay at home with their kids and raise their kids, it seems like we could afford to maybe subsidize the parent a little bit.
Right, to not have to find that second job.
Right.
You would think.
I've got 6 kids.
A little far left.
30 grand a year, 25 grand a year times 6 kids.
Yep.
Yeah.
I could probably...
You could probably find a good education.
Now, I have we have our own business.
I hear the word subsidize?
We redirect.
Yeah,
redirect.
It's dicey language.
Yeah.
I'm coming after the teachers' unions now. Great.
If you could remove some of those financial barriers for parents, because, I think there's a lot of parents who they both work, and if the financial barrier was removed, they would love to stay at home with their kids, at least when they're 2, 3, 4 years old. You know, so I don't know. Yeah. Again, I don't know people. I don't know where people are. Maybe people don't like staying at home with their kids. In my opinion, if you don't like staying home with your kids, maybe you need to reevaluate your life choices. You know, that's a little bit harsh too.
Yep.
But I'm a huge fan of kids being raised by their parents.
I'd take the $5 million.
The
$5 million.
That's just for 1 year.
That's $20 million.
That's one year. 27, 28,000, something like that.
Yeah, over the 13 years. Yeah, I mean, come on.
Yeah. Isn't it?
That is a very good point. One point that you brought up before we close was like you have to be an intentional parent no matter where your kids go, no matter what they do. And I would argue it takes a very substantial, I won't say more, but a substantial amount of intentionality when your child is out learning from somebody else all day. You need to be aware and conscious and putting in the time to make sure that your kid is solidly grounded.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't understand when you have the time to have all these little conversations we're talking about with kids. Now, they're obviously gone from 8 to 3 or whatever. You know, once they get into the older grades, I don't know how much homework you have. I didn't go to public school.
An
8
to 5, 8 to 5:30 when you're playing sports.
A couple hours. And then if you do sports, there's a couple hours. You know, so a couple hours of sports, a couple hours of homework, and you're headed to bed. You know, again, you have to make time. To me, that aspect of it,
just time management
is harder. I don't know. Then you know, it's hard to have your kids at home with you too.
Right.
Like it's not the easy way out to homeschool. You know, it's much easier to have a babysitter come and put them on a yellow bus and take them to the school for the day and bring them back. You know, we'll feed them twice for you and you know whatever. So it's not the easy way out. I'm so grateful that my wife has that passion. You know, and she's just super excited. And I don't even pay her $27,000 per year per kid.
You don't?
So I got a good deal going on.
Yeah, and plus she's a mom, so she's gonna do all the mom stuff.
Yep.
Cool. No, I like really getting into some of those. I mean, I wanted to get into the misconceptions a little bit, but we don't have time. Would you come back on?
Yeah,
Okay,
definitely.
Awesome. We would love to have you back on.
Yeah.
And then get into your business side of life as well, and how you kind of balance that with family and because you're a businessman through and through.
Yeah.
Anything else, Nick? If anybody hears any crying, that'd be mine. I have to say that every single time.
To go see.
That is a good way to end it because that'll get people wanting to come back for the second one.
Yes, tune in.
That was good
for Tyson Roggie Part 2.
That was great.
It's great talking with you guys. Nice to have conversations. We live, you know, with each other in life and stuff. But it's nice to have intentional conversation for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to find. It seems
absolutely.
So cool.
Yep.
Nick, you want to take us out of here?
Thanks, Tyson. See you next time. May I go to a soccer game?
Yeah. Thanks,
luck.
everybody.
You're gonna get
soccer. Next prototypical soccer day.
You're gonna get called in.
Thank goodness.
Or is this your kid's soccer game?
Yeah. Thank goodness that the Lysa soccer league it's the fun league.
Yeah.
So I can just go and sit and like there's no the parenting aspect of it is like very minimal. There's no drama. It's just
maybe we should have picked Lysa soccer instead of Little League.
Kicking and screaming.
Watching the kids like whack the ball around for fun is pretty easy.
Cool.
Awesome.
Fun.
Well, thanks again, Tice.
Yeah.
And look forward to this coming out on Monday. And
sounds good.
See you next time.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. See ya.